if you're in my Facebook group, you saw that the other day I was talking about making a bucket hat. So I've made a video of making a bucket hat. This is a size 4 or for a 4-year-old. The pattern goes from like a baby up to an adult, which I thought was really cool. And it is a free pattern, so the link is in the description. So if you'd like to see how I did this, and please note I've never made one before, and I had to stop the instructions to just double check, so I stopped halfway through. But yeah, fun, quick project. Stay tuned to see how it's done. Alright guys, so I have cut my pieces, and I have put my extra heavy non-woven fusible just on one half of the brim. So my child chose these fabrics, so they don't necessarily go together, but I don't care, it's going to make him happy. So let's get started. So you should have 2 outside brim pieces and then 2 lining brims. These hats are reversible too, which is really cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start sewing everything together, right sides together. Now the pattern calls for a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. It's not something that we normally do, or I normally do in videos. So if you can't eyeball it, you can either draw it on your fabric, or you can get one of these handy dandy magnets and actually put it 3/8 of an inch from your needle, and then you can just run the fabric up against it like so. Now I'm going to chain stitch a lot of these pieces because, again, I like to save thread. It's just my thing that I do. I didn't do a cutting video of this, mainly because I didn't even think I was going to get to record a video. But my husband came home today, and so him and Jessie are watching Minions on television. Just start sewing in random ones. So I'm just sewing both ends of all the curved pieces together. That's pretty much all I'm doing. So that's both of those ones done. Take this one. I'm going to do this one next, so they don't end up with not enough pieces to chain stitch. And I'm just making sure that I back stitch at each end, and my stitch length is on 2.5, which is my standard joining stitch length. So I will have one quite stiff brim, but that's what I want. And then the pattern actually says the rest of it is optional whether you want to fuse it or not. So I obviously chose not. So now what we want to do is we want to open this up. Now it's not going to sit flat because of the shape, because it's designed to kind of sit down like this as a brim, not straight out. So it's not going to sit perfectly flat here, but that's okay. So the first thing I want to do is finger press this open. And I'm going to do the same to this one. You could also, in turn, if you wanted to, push one side one way and one the other. But because I've got the thick fusible interfacing, I want to keep that seam as flat and smooth as possible. So by opening it out, that's what I'm going to achieve. So I'm going to do the same to this one. I'd also like to note, I've never made one of these before. Ever. Never made a hat. But I quickly read through the instructions and it doesn't seem that hard. And I'm of the opinion that nothing is impossible. As you can hear, they're watching Minions. So then again, we're just clipping. Now you probably don't have to put this many clips around, but because I've never made it before, I just want to make sure it's not going to shift on me, because that would not be ideal. You could also use pins. So if you're normally a dressmaker and you have pins and not pegs, and I'm calling these pegs from now on, because I can clip the pegs on as opposed to clip the clips, because that's just a silly sentence. So these are now my pegs. So anyway, if you don't have pegs, you can definitely do this with pins instead. And by having this magnet here, I can now just slot this on. And so long as I run this along the edge, we're going to get a perfectly even seam all the way around. And I'm just going to clean up my pegs as I go. You don't want to have a mess on your sewing table. Ah, look at that, beautiful. Now, because this is a curve, I'm going to clip it, and I'm going to see if my zigzag scissors, or pinking shears as they are also known, are actually going to cut it. They're pretty blunt, so I wouldn't be surprised if they won't. But I just want to cut off. I want to get close, pretty close to the stitching, but I don't want to necessarily get too close. And what the zigzags are going to do is allow this to kind of move more. So when I turn it inside out, it shouldn't sit jagged. It should be pretty smooth and circular, which is kind of the point. As you can tell, the back half of these scissors are still kind of okay. So normally I'm all about cut the big ones, but the ends are definitely blunt, so that's not going to work in this particular instance. But if you've got new scissors, always use the full width of the blade when you're cutting. It's better for your hand. And it's better to keep the scissors evenly sharp. And it's quicker. Lots of benefits, really. Okay. I really need to buy a new pair of these. One day I am going to remember when I'm at the shop. Okay, so now we're going to turn that right way out. Like that. And because I'm pulling on that seam, I'm trying to get it kind of as out and smooth as possible. And now we have a spaceship kind of a shape, which is fun. Alright, I'm going to take off this magnet because it's in the way. I also don't really need it. They are really good for like being lazy though, so I do have one. I think it was like $1 on eBay. Came from China, took a month. I know Spotlight sells them for like $3 or $4, and you can get like fun coloured ones and shaped ones and all kinds of fun stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the stitch length longer because this is now kind of more decorative than anything else. And I'm going to stitch all the way around the edge at 1/8 of an inch. Now because I'm doing a complete circle, I am not going to backstitch because I don't want to draw attention to that. So I'm just going to smooth it out with my fingers as I go, and I always want to stop with the needle down so that as I'm adjusting, it won't come out from under the needle and wreck my smooth curves. Needle down. So I'm just rolling this in my fingers to get the sharks underneath. I definitely think he's going to wear PJ masks out more than the sharks, but these are the fabrics he picked, so... It can be reversible. It can be machine washable. I wouldn't do a hot wash though because it's a fusible interfacing. Although we are going to put lots of stitches, so that may not matter too much. So again, I'm just kind of I'm kind of using my thumb to smooth that down. So I'm kind of doing this to push down and under the shark fabric. Needle down. I'm just going to keep going around. Now it does say that you can just do this one edge stitch and then stop, but I'm not going to. I'm going to do several because I think they look cool. And now I'm nearly back to the start, so I'm going to trim off those tails so that I don't get them caught up in this. And then when I get back to the start, I'm going to do 2 stitches forward and 1 back. And then trim that off. So now my brim will sit nicely. Now again, I want lots more stitches than that. So I'm going to make sure that that's smoothed down and then go underneath. And I'm going to do a full 1/4 inch from the last one. Because if I do 1/8 of an inch, I'm going to be here forever. And don't go faster than you can maneuver things. Like, it's not a race. You also want to make sure that everything under here is smooth. And so we don't get any lumps and bumps, because it is a reversible hat. So you want both sides to look nice. And then I'm back to the start. So 2 stitches forward. That was 2 back, not 1, but I was close. And see, this is why you should trim your tails before you get there, because now I've got this big loopiness and I don't want any messy thread there. So now you can see, this is what you see quite often on hats. So I'm going to continue up because it looks cool. And because it's also going to make this brim like nice and stiff. And machine washable in a hot wash will now be possible because I have stitched the interfacing down so well. So I'm just making sure that nothing's kind of swiveled and scrunched up underneath. I want to make sure it's all nice and smooth. Now I'm nearly back to the start, so I'm going to trim those tails off so I don't have the same problem as earlier. I forgot my bin, so I'm using one of the bowls I made in the video the other day as my rubbish bin. It's kind of fun. Alright. To do the whole way up, and I'm probably not going to. You can also tell that these lines are getting quicker because the circle's getting smaller. And if you wanted to, so you can back stitch here and then just lift up and move over, and then you'll just have to snip the little jump stitches. So I'm probably only going to do 1 or 2 more. I don't want my whole band being all stitched. I'll just do like half-ish. So now I'm back to the start. I can back stitch, move over and go again. I probably didn't need to back stitch there. That was a habit. You could also stitch this in a spiral, I suppose. Okay, that's enough for me. That looks good. And then I'm just going to snip these little jump stitches in between there, like so. Because this is a polyester thread, I can also just kind of singe those ends a little bit. And then again, I'm going to come here and snip those joins, hold it up, and then just quickly singe it. So that's my brim. It looks good. It looks good on both sides. And I can always do more lines later if I decide that that's the way I want to go. So now I'm going to take my circle, and I'm actually going to fold it in half and clip like an even half bit, because I think this is going to be the easiest way for me to join that on. Alright. So, it looks like this. The shorter end, or the top end, is where the circle's going to go. So because I've just clipped the 2 centers, what I can do is I'm going to open this out flat, which actually I probably don't need to. I can probably push this one way and the other one the other. But that requires more thought than I can give at this time of night. So, find my halfway clip, which is there, and then peg it on. Clip it on with my peg. I can't change all the words. It's defeating the purpose, isn't it? Alright, so I've done the 2 halves there. And then I can just move my way around. And again, if you've got pins, you could definitely pin instead of peg. I'm just going to clip this all the way around, making sure that it's going to fit. So as you can see, I'm pushing it to be a 3D object like I do with bags. Same principle. Like I'm going to do with shirt sleeves, hopefully tomorrow. And then I'm going to come to the other side. Now I'm sure there is possibly a quicker way, but considering this is the first one I've done, I'm sticking to what I can do without a pattern. I could probably just put less clips, but I don't want to have any like weird bits on my hat. Not that it's my hat, but you know what I mean. And you can also use like little tiny grommets or eyelets to have those holes that they put in the hats so that it gets less sweaty. Alright, so we're pretending that this is the gusset in a bag. So we're going to put it gusset side up like we normally would. And then I'm going to come in. I'm going to go back to a joining stitch length, back stitch, and then work my way around. And again, I'm doing a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And I'm going to tidy up my pegs as I go. Transition to the word pegs quite easily. I'm very proud of my brain for that. Alright, so I'm just working my way around, making sure that I don't get any kind of creases in this piece. I want it to be nice and smooth, so that when I look at it from the inside, there's no kind of crumples. You can even turn it out the right way to have a look. That looks pretty good. I thought I had one then, but we're okay. So that's now that. So to help this sit better, if you want to, you can come in with your zigzag scissors or pinking shears. I do know that they're called pinking shears, but zigzag scissors is more fun to say. So this is again going to help that curve better, except these scissors are definitely too blunt for that. So I'm just going to leave it. They can't quite cope. Alright, other one. So again, fold it in half, clip the halfway points, and so then from the top edge, I'm going to open out that seam and then join that on right there with a peg. Clip it on with a peg. Same with the other side. This is working out to be quite easy. I thought this would be much harder. Let's see if we can do it with less clips, pegs, clipping, I don't know. As long as it all joins up. So see how I'm holding my thumbs and then pushing that to be a 3D object? Because it is. I don't know if that's less clipping, pegging, whatever. So I'm just going to hold it like that and then add a few of these on. one more. Alright. Gusset side up, same as always. 3/8 of an inch seam. Oh my god, I should make Christmas hats. They would be so cute. A little bit obsessed with Christmas this year. Not sure why. Everything's Christmas. Christmas tree skirt's going to be the next Christmas thing we're doing, by the way. And due to popular opinion, I have purchased the tattoo Christmas embroidery designs. Alright, round and round we go. Back to the start and then back stitch. And I'm going to trim off those tails. I've also got one attached to my arm here. And then again, I'm going to turn it to make sure that we're all good and that nothing has pinched anywhere. Despite all the creases, we're actually good. So, now I'm going to put right sides together for this hat. Part? Is that what they did? I can't remember. Pretty sure they put this one inside of that one. Or maybe it was just directly into this one. So that's going to go there. So I'm going to clip this to here and separate. I'm going to separate these two. So I think that's what I've got to do. Maybe I'll check the pattern. So I'm going to flip that over like this. And then again, I'm going to open out that seam because I've done it to the other side. So you want all your seams nice and flat. If you did choose to make one seam go one way and the other, just make sure that that's going the right way. I feel like I should check the pattern. I'm not sure if I meant to grab all of these or just one of these. Because then the other one's got to go on, envelop it, leave a gap, turn it through. All right, let me check the pattern. Hold on. All right, so it wants us to grab all of it. So we're just going to grab the whole brim, which would make sense if you did the lines all the way around. I can see how that's a thing. All right, so we're just going to include both of these pieces in the clipping with the pegs. That sentence made sense. So I'm going to grab a bunch of clips. And so the pattern says to do this at 3/8 of an inch and then do the other one also at 3/8 of an inch. But that would mean that you need to make sure that your seams are absolutely 100% tip-top perfect. So I'm thinking that this one might be 1/4 of an inch. And then I'll do the other side at 3/8 of an inch so that we won't see any mis-stitching. You know what? Worst case scenario is I stuff it up. But I think that that's smarter. Especially for my first ever hat. I don't know. It is looking very cute though. I'm very excited. So I'm just working my way around. It's a circle, so there's no real right and wrong. I don't know why I just took that from there. That was silly. I'm just going to put another one on. Okay. So, from that side, it kind of actually looks like a hat already. Yay! So the best way I think to do this is to come in with the brim side down. So I'm just going to do a 1/4 inch seam because the other side's going to take up the slack. So pretty much what I'm doing is I'm running the edge of my foot along the edge of the fabric. And then with the other side, I will stitch it a little bit deeper so that we won't see all the stitching. There's lots of maneuvering with this, so you just want to keep making sure that you're moving it around. And don't take your pegs off until you get right up to them so that nothing can shift from under them. Alright. So now, from this side, we have a cool hat. I'm very impressed. I like this pattern so far. So far, so good. Alright, so trim off those tails. Ow, shoulder. Okay. And so then again, and I'm going to trim off that tail right there. Not that you'll see it, but that's not the point. So then from this way, I'm also going to go right sides together and I'm going to open out this seam like that. And then grab a peg and clip that together. So this is about to get, what the idea is we're going to turn that in and then squish all of the hat into here, but then we just have to leave a gap. So they suggest to remember to leave a gap. They actually suggest to put a pin in horizontally so that you know that that's not the stitch area. So what they've done in the pattern is really clever. So you grab a pin and you put it that way, and then that's the bit that you don't stitch. I like that. It will remind you because you physically can't sew all the pins that way. That's very clever. So I'm just maneuvering around. Now this is going to fight you a little bit because the brim is obviously wider, because circles get wider as they get bigger. That's kind of the point. So I'm going to add more clips or pegs to this side than I did the first piece because I want to make sure that nothing moves. Alright, so see, we just want to shove that in and then bring this side up and then peg it. And you also want to see this here, I don't know if you can see that, but that's got like a fold. So you also want to make sure that that's not going to happen. And that little jerk there was, I just stabbed myself with the pin. I'm going to take it out because I don't need it there. But it is a good idea. Maybe put it at the end right before you start stitching so that you don't stab yourself in the hand like I did. Alright. I also don't think that I want to leave my gap right at the seam. I think that's a bit silly of me. So I might leave it there. Okay. So I'm going to stitch it with this side up so I can actually see my previous stitches, which is clever, to make sure that I go to the inside of them so that we won't see any of them. So I'm going to back stitch. We're definitely back stitching because we're not going to join back up to here. And I'm going to go very slowly to make sure I feel that nothing is folded up into where I'm stitching, because that would be disastrous. So I'm going nice and slowly. I'm almost going one clip at a time and then readjusting. And I just want to put my clips away as I go. And then here's my finish. So I'm going to hold my finger there so I don't stitch past my finger. And it reckons to leave about 2 inches gap so you can turn it through, which I think I've done pretty well. So now we're just going to slowly maneuver this through the hole. So I'm actually just pulling on the brim, and you'll notice that I'm doing this kind of motion. I'm not just pulling it, I'm easing it out on the angle. Oh, look at this. This is super cool. And then I've just got this little gap here. Now, as much as I hate hand sewing, I actually think that might be my best option at this particular point in time. So because it's a little gap, it's actually sitting on the curve really well, which I'm impressed with. So I'm going to take some pins and just pin that down. And think about where I've got a hand stitching needle. Because I use them so rarely, I don't even know where one is. Oh, actually, there's one on here. Look at that. Oh, it's my lucky day. So I've also decided, looking at this hat, I want to do these lines all the way up. I do want to do that. I didn't know if I did or not. I've decided I do. Okay. Oop. I've got blue tack on the bottom to stick it to things. So I'm going to just pull out some of this. I'm not going to unthread my machine because I still want to do more of those lines. I think they look cool. And I'm going to double this over just because it's only 2 inches. And I reckon I can get a pretty good invisible little stitch going on to seal it up. So the way I just did that knot is I made a loop and then threaded the thread through the loop about 5 times, give or take. So now I'm going to take out the first one and I'm going to stitch in first so that that knot is hidden. For those that have never done hand stitching before, you don't want to see your knot. And then I'm just going to, what I want to do is I want to just try and capture the inside layer so that we're not going to see the thread. I know that's potentially difficult to understand. So if I fold it like this, I just want to kind of pick up just that layer there instead of going all the way through, and then under here where the fold is, I just want to capture the folded side. This is really hard to do on this angle, right? So then I'm going to stitch to there so that that stitch isn't seen from the outside of the hat. So then I'm just going to fold it over so I can see in the fold. And if you've done this a few times, you can kind of wiggle it back and forth on a zigzag so that you can capture the inside several times at once. And then you just pull that needle through. And so from the outside, you can't see my stitches. So if you're going to do zigzags, just make sure that you're doing little ones because you want to capture a lot of that, you want to do lots of little ones so that the stitches are small and close together. And that way it's not going to look gappy. And if you can only, I can usually only do about 2 sets of zigzags. I don't try and get heaps because it never works. I've learnt that the hard way. So I usually do 2 each side. So 1 or half, 1. Oops. Or I can drop it. So go half, 1, 1.5, 2, and then come back out and then pull that out and through like that. Don't pull too hard. We're not trying to gather the fabric. I can take that pin out now because I'm very close to the edge or the end of my hand stitching. It's not that I can't do hand stitching, it's that I can't be bothered. There's a very different sentence there. When I was little, I did a lot of hand stitching and cross stitching, and now that I have a machine, machines are more fun. It's pretty much where I get to. So because I'm getting close to the end, I'm now just doing 1 set of zigzags. because the gap is nearly to the end. All right, one more set and we'll be all done. So now I'm back to my normal stitching. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a loop. I'm going to push my needle halfway through, and then to do this, I wind the thread around 5 times. 3, 4, 5. I find 6 is too much. Just if you're wondering why 5, I don't know, but 6 never works. So I want to have them all the way down to the base of the needle, and I'm going to hold my finger there so that the loops stay there, and then just pull the thread through, and that's going to create your knot, and then you can just chop off all of that excess like that. There you go. I'm going to finish those rounds because I think it's going to look good. I'm going to go back up to my decorative stitch length, and I can start anywhere because we're going around in circles. I just have to remember what size I was doing. So I was doing 1/4 inch away from the original set. And now that everything's stitched together, it's not going to move. So again, this is an optional thing. You don't have to do these lines, but I do like them. I think they look cool. So I'm going to continue. Move over, back stitch, and off we go. You could actually get quite fancy with this. You could do like a pattern. You could zigzag up and then do lines inside the zigzags. You got funky triangles going on. That'd be fun. That'd be a lot of work, but I'd do it for my kids, for sure. Back stitch. I've probably only got 2 more rounds to go. And as you can tell, they're getting quicker because they're getting smaller circles. Now I'm probably rushing these a little bit, so they're not perfect. These other Hattie's had for like 8 months, so it's time for something funky and new. And then maybe I'll stop there. That'll do. Alright, so now I'm just going to chop these jump stitches. That's what you'd call them on an embroidery machine, so that's what I'm calling them today. And then instead of trying to chop them both, I can actually just singe them down, like so. There you go, guys. Reversible hat. And as you can tell, it doesn't have to match, like, just make them fun. It's a fun gift. It'd be a really cool stocking stuffer as well, or like a gift, because in Australia, it's now coming into summer, so they're going to be needed. So I hope that was educational somewhat, and if not, that's okay. I still wanted to do it. So yeah, I will see you all for the next video. Bye guys!